Hello everybody, this is Curtis from the channel Curtis Reacts. Today we're going to react on this channel. If you don't know who I am or what I'm doing, I'm a Swedenborgian Christian. Or if you want to know what that means, check out my other channel off the left. I explain my whole worldview, everything about it. Today we're going to react to a video that is called What It Will Take for Me to Become a Christian Again by MythVision Postcast. I'm particularly excited about this because I want to know what is it that motivates people around issues of religion. And also, what do people think becoming a Christian means? This is a guy who I think was a Christian. I mean, you know, this title is inferring this. He was a Christian, now he's not. So what is all the carrots and the sticks and all that stuff? Come on, people, let's go.
A lot of times I get comments from people who are Christians asking me because they don't like how critical sometimes I am of Christianity. I was one.
I knew it. And I guess the title says it. He's coming hard at Christianity. He was one. He's got to have some reason why he's coming at it now. People are like, hey man, will you just come back to our team? What do we got to do?
What would it take for you, Derek, to believe Christianity is true again?
So right there, to become a Christian equates with believing Christianity is true. That might seem like no duh, but I feel like that is an important distinction and could come into play here.
I've had conversations, just to paint a little picture of the background before I answer this question, where my own family, my mother, my sisters, and I would sit at Christmas or somewhere, and the conversation of religion, Christianity, Jesus would come up. And we would talk, and they'd ask me, and I politely have these conversations knowing that the things I think are going to be offensive to those who literally believe that their beliefs, their faith is true. And also, if you don't believe in their Christianity, what will happen to the sinner, to the person who does not believe after they die?
The sinner who doesn't believe? So obviously describing a tense and difficult situation where he's got family members who not only are still in the faith, but think like, this is really important for you to be in it. You're leaving and you're putting yourself in harm's way. But he's saying that the sinner, you know, I'm assuming he's talking about hell, but it's like, what's the sin? It's that you don't believe in Christianity. I don't think that that's what a sin is. I thought that sinning was like doing bad things. Believing in Christianity is believing in Christianity, right? Aren't those two different things?
Most Christians that I walk into in this world believe in some form of torment, whether it's annihilation or conscious torment for all eternity.
Well, conscious torment for all eternity is the worst idea that can exist and the worst thing plaguing Christianity. It's not like it's written in and out all over the Bible. You get a few cryptic phrases that some people have interpreted for that, and then it's like, of course nobody's going to want to be a Christian. If you believe in God that will torture you forever if you don't believe in him, it's done. They could say they love that God. It's all compulsion. It's just like, do you love your dictator? Well, if I say no, you're going to kill me forever. Of course I love you. Where are you getting that from? Get that thing out. You're accusing God of being worse than the worst of the worst human beings that has ever walked the world. Nobody, not like Al Capone, still wants to torture his enemies 1,000 years from now. I'm not saying that a life of evil will make you happy. I'm not saying that evil doesn't have within it its own punishment. I'm not saying that there's all kinds of suffering you can incur on yourself. But just like conscience torment for all eternity, it just doesn't make any sense. There's nothing in it that makes any sense at all.
But when I answer, I don't think this is true. I think legend, myth is laden in the narratives of Jesus, that Jesus did not do the things that are described of him in those respects. One can argue whether or not some mundane, apocalyptic, charismatic Jew actually did teachings and had a following. I don't deny that that's probably likely. What I say is what we see in the Gospels are narratives. You can't sift through that legend and narrative and be overly confident on what's in the material as if that material of what it's saying about Jesus actually occurred.
Historicity. I guess historicity on one hand, and then did the supernatural stuff actually happen? Okay, so that is, as far as I can tell, we're at the emotional center of our conversation. This is the fulcrum on which it swings, that he's coming from a tradition where people are saying, look, the thing that's important, the thing that makes you a sinner or not is, do you believe? And here he seems to be defining believing as, did that stuff happen. We have this book. Did he really exist in this time period? Did he turn water into wine? That is what everything rides on. So it sounds like what's leading him, why he's like, I'm out of here, to Christianity, is talk about myths. This is probably reflecting other cultures. He's talking about the unlikelihood of the accuracy of it. Why would I believe that that's true just because it's in this book?
Now, here's the deal. As soon as I tell my mom, my sisters, and them that I don't find it convincing anymore, I don't find it something that is true. In fact, I find every reason to think it's man-made. They look at each other almost like at that moment, either they didn't like what was said and it triggered them, and they turned at each other and said, he'll eventually come around. He'll realize he's wrong.
I can't, like, this whole thing, this is not a critique of this guy and what he's saying. Like, he's honestly representing his experiences. It just gets me thinking about the state of what Christianity is. That this whole scene he's describing between his mother and sister, I think he said, and him, and the tension there, and he's lost his way. It's all about, do you believe what this book says? We're not hearing about morality. And if we're talking about Jesus Christ, there is, I guess, this big network of humans that think the most important thing is, do you believe those details happened? But the reason that, why are we all hanging around Christianity in the first place? Why did that survive for that long? It's because of the teachings. It's because the things that came out of his mouth are touching people's hearts. And what's he saying? What does Jesus say? It's all about, like, be a good person. I mean, the most compelling and most magnetic things that he says: love your enemies, love your neighbor as yourself. People talk about the parable of the Good Samaritan and how, wow, you should help people even when you don't really feel like you should. He's forgiving the woman caught in adultery. So you're not, isn't that the struggle in every human being, is between following Jesus inside you, which is like the things he commanded to not do and to do, and then the other side, the impulses that we get, I'm just going to be a jerk to people, I'm going to bully people, I'm going to steal from people, I'm going to kill them, I'm going to hate them. Isn't that the human condition? And that we can be having this conversation here like, oh, this is the crux of Christianity, when actually we're not talking about the work. I could see why this guy would want to get out of something that is fixated on, do you think this is true or not? Do you think this is true or not? Rather than that conversation about the trueness of it being an adjunct to the conversation about what kind of life are you living.
I used to literally believe that God created the heavens and the earth. I was a young earth creationist. I went into old earth creationism. I started going into the John Walton, kind of trying to take a more historical, ancient Near Eastern context and incorporate that while being a believer.
I don't know who John Walton is. I believe God created the heavens and the earth, but I've never been a young earth creationist. I come from the Swedenborgian tradition, which is the thing he started out by saying. Swedenborg was like, look, man, you cannot look at this. For example, Genesis, which is the first thing that he was studying. You cannot look at this as a literal account of creation, because it's not that. It's never been about that. What good is it for God to say, I'm going to tell you how the world was created in a really, really broad overview? What does that do for the individual human life? The description in Genesis of the days of creation, we did videos about this on my other channel, is the description of something that matters to you now, something that happens in you, which is the creation from us being non-spiritual or not born again to being born again. So this is like, the darkness is the ego, and the nastiness and the negativity you kind of automatically start with. Let there be light is when we first start our journey of understanding that God exists and wanting to move toward what's good and true. That has always been how I looked at it, because it's something I can have action on now. But also, if you don't have that, you run into this ghastly situation where the world is discovering unequivocally, with so much evidence, that look, this is how the world works. We understand just by looking at the world through the scientific method. Look at there was dinosaurs. There's older stuff than 6,000 years. And Christians, good-hearted Christians, are like, oh, I can't believe that. I have to somehow believe everybody's faking it because of this hyper-literalist reading of the Bible, which was not how Christians even used to do it. This has come around in the last couple hundred years. So of course this guy's going to be like, get me out of here. To be that constricted and have to go against your rationality. It sounds like his rationality was like, wait, this doesn't, you are telling me to believe this thing that does not make sense. You're telling me to believe this thing that does not fit with reality. And finally, he's just going to explode out of there. He did.
I started realizing, holy smokes, these narratives in the Hebrew scriptures, in the Old Testament, look awfully similar and have a lot of the attributes to the surrounding mythic and legendary material around them. It wasn't Jesus yet that I was willing to swallow that pill. It was people like Samson looking like Heracles. It was people like Adam and the Genesis account that clearly are riffing off of legendary mythical material on flood narratives that are found in Mesopotamia that are also mythical. It is when I started to look and see, why do I think this one's right, especially when you start recognizing that it is dependent on the mythical material in some cases.
I get it. So this is like his break with it is saying, hey, you guys are telling me that this is a phenomena unique on the earth. There's this thing that's called the Bible, and this one time only, God did this thing, and it was recorded, and it should occur in a vacuum. You shouldn't be able to see any parallels or anything that it was influenced by, because that would make you doubt the historicity of it. Funny thing is, to me, what he's describing, the fact that, yes, you see material that echoes that, maybe even is predating the Bible. I don't know. I'm not a scholar or that kind of stuff. That has the same themes in it and has the same actions in some case. To me, that is more evidence of the divine at work. If God's really out there and has been since the beginning, and God's interest is for us to lead the kind of lives that will allow us to be with him. God wants to save people, the Christian thing, and everybody's God's child to the same amount. Is that true? Just the other day, my daughter was like, if I had brothers and sisters, would you still love me the same? Who's going to say no? Wouldn't God be trying to disseminate the knowledge and the tools to reach him to the entire earth? According to Swedenborg, which is why I find Swedenborg so compelling, all that stuff he's saying is is evidence of God in action. That yes, God has had revelation to people all throughout history, and that the correspondences or the spiritual metaphors that are powerful in the Bible existed in other places. That was so that those people could have that same underlying structure. Now, the Bible is in its own class, according to Swedenborg, that there is more wisdom and truth and power in there than anything else. And by a long shot, there is something very special going on with the Bible. But the fact that it's in other cultures is because these are eternal, universal truths that are now gathered into this very important, effective tool called the Bible. If there weren't that material elsewhere in the world, it'd be like, well, why is God only giving it to a few people? I'm just saying, when I see like the tangled knots he's in, I'm just like, man, I love Swedenborg's explanation. The theology that he gives, it sets my rational mind at ease, and I'm able to say, yes, Jesus, yes, the Bible, and yes, evolution, and yes, the world's mythological culture is part of one large story that points in the same direction. Feels good.
I've written an article on academia, and I called it the minimal doubts argument. In the material of the New Testament, we have a doubting tradition.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't have thought of that before. Doubting Thomas is who comes to mind here. I like that.
Where the Christian apostles themselves, the disciples themselves, doubt Jesus' resurrection. Now, they are lucky, according to the material, because Jesus actually helps overcome their doubt. He actively makes sure that they see his post-appearance, his post-resurrection appearance. He even goes so far, and hear me out, Thomas hears Jesus is risen. The other disciples say he rose. He rose. Thomas doesn't believe them. He doesn't take their word to the bank. Good for Thomas. He's not gullible. He doesn't just accept what people say. That is me. So what would it take if he really loves that much? Either he doesn't care that I don't believe, because in the end, it doesn't even matter. He doesn't exist, or he needs to appear, just like the texts say of him.
He doesn't seem cynical. Like, he seems like he's really wrestled with this and been on a journey. So it sounds like what we're getting is this guy says, hey, if you want me to become a Christian again, I got to get the Thomas treatment. I need to see Jesus Christ in front of me. Okay? So it's reasonable what he's saying. But that is assuming that what being a Christian means, the soul of it, the fulcrum on which it swings is, do you believe this really happened? Do you believe that this thing happened in the past? Do you believe that I'm who I say I am? That's the main thing. I would argue that if that happened for this guy, and then he said, okay, you got me. Now I believe that you really existed. That I don't know if you'd really be a Christian. Because what does it mean to be a Christian? And I'll do the definition from Inside Christianity. When somebody comes up to Jesus and says, hey, Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? Like, what is the most important thing? And Jesus says, you have to believe that I exist and that I did. No, he says, love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself. To follow Jesus Christ, to say like, hey, what are you, Curtis? Oh, me, I'm a Christian. It wouldn't just mean I believe that thing has happened. Because if so, then I'm a flatbed truckian. Like, I believe that there's such a thing as a flatbed truck. I think it really is there. The marker of you are a follower of this is, do I love it? Do I think that this is the thing that I most believe is worthy of following? I would be at the point where I say, this is the thing that regardless I would want to follow because I find it to be the most ethically, morally satisfying thing. Like, I genuinely have a reverence for who I believe God is. The confirmation, like the feeling of, oh, this I'm sure it's real, that's nice, but it's the frosting. If I'm just convinced because, okay, you're there, how much different is that than like, okay, the dictator that runs things? It's about love. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Love your neighbor as yourself. Everything that comes out of the mouth of Jesus. Those things, I love those things. Like, that's the heart of Christianity. Maybe he's got that heart. According to Swedenborg, it's all the goodness that we ever experience, all the love we ever experience comes from God and is God's within us. And the thing where we really meet with Jesus is in that love and in the truth, but most primarily in the love. So if this guy's got in his heart a love of that love, then if he did see Jesus, he would just be recognizing, oh yeah, it's you. The thing that I already love, which is what's right and good and true and fair and loving and everything. Did this thing happen or not? That's not the heart of what it is. I don't know if that's what we want to call a Christian. So that's the video. This was fun listening to this guy. I feel like he's really earnestly looking at it. He's got his morality compass and what he thinks and his rationality compass and all that. So it's good. I love to get to hear what's motivating people and what's driving them. You just got reacted to, everybody out there. React to this video. Leave a comment, like and subscribe. Go love what's good and true.